Welcome to Help, I Have Kids. I'm your host, Pam Marshall, a mom of 5 and a pediatric occupational therapist with over 35 years experience. This podcast is designed to equip you with practical tools, insights from experts, and real life stories. Because at the end of the day, you are the head of your child's care team. Each week, you'll hear from pediatric experts and fellow moms like you that will help build your confidence. They'll offer clarity and empower you to make informed decisions that work for your whole family.
Hi, welcome back to Help, I Have Kids, the podcast. I'm Beth Blankenship, and I'm stepping into the hosting shoes today while Pam is on a well-deserved vacation. I've been on the show a couple times before as a guest, but if you haven't seen those episodes, I'm a speech language pathologist at Marshall Pediatric Therapy. I have 4 boys, and I live in Georgetown and manage the clinic in Georgetown. And today I have a really exciting special guest. Liz Abbey is our administrative manager at Marshall, but she's also a mom. She's got 4 kiddos, but 2 of her sons have autism. We're going to talk about Ben and Noah, but I just want to welcome Liz to the podcast today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about telehealth therapy. And as a speech therapist, and a mom, I have experience on both sides of that, the telehealth screen, I guess. And I can see the benefits, and we all live through COVID. So we know how virtual school went and how that kind of set the stage for telehealth. So we're just going to dive in. It might be something people are skeptical about. I've noticed lots of parents are really weary of trying it. But I wanted to show you guys and get a chance to talk to a parent who has experience with telehealth and to hear my point of view as a therapist. And we're going to look at the benefits of telehealth from both sides, parents and therapists, and then throw in some tips. So welcome, Liz. Before we jump in, we always like to hear, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received as a mom?
Oh, wow. After 25 years of being a mom, that is a lot of content to go through and advice. But I think that the best advice that I'd ever gotten was to just kind of expect the unexpected. Momhood and motherhood changes you, and you have to roll with the punches, because as a mom of 4 children, I have 4 uniquely different children. And so I have had to adapt and to pivot constantly to adapt to whatever their needs are, and especially when they're in different phases of their life. So currently I have adult children as well as a teenager and a preteen. So I am constantly pivoting to whatever their needs are. So definitely is to expect the unexpected, because as soon as you think you have it down, they throw a curveball and something else happens.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. I say that all the time. I always, as soon as you say my kid's never going to do that, here they come doing that, so it's going to, you just
Absolutely.
Never know.
You never know.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about telehealth. If you are listening and you're not familiar with telehealth is virtual therapy. So it's with a therapist and the child, typically, or it can be an adult too, or a teenager. My teenage sons have done it. I've done it as an adult with practitioners and therapists and doctors. But it's basically where you meet online with your service provider and you receive your services while you're not in the same room, but over the internet in some way. A lot of times we use Zoom or Google Meet. FaceTime sometimes. A lot of the platforms we have to watch out for to be HIPAA compliant. So there's lots of things on that side, but that's typically handled by your therapist. So Liz, before we started and before COVID, did you have any experience with telehealth prior to COVID, or was that really your intro?
I had zero. So there was no experience. I remember when COVID happened, and I actually worked for Marshall when COVID happened. So I was pivoting from this side of the camera as well as the parent side of the camera, and it was a lot. So I had zero experience. The world shut down, and we had to learn really quick. So virtual school, virtual therapy, and I was working virtually as well. So everything kind of switched at the height of COVID for us.
Right. So did you have any, like when they first said, hey, we're going to meet for therapy online, join me on Zoom, did you have any initial thoughts or fears about what that would look like, especially with boys with autism?
So if anyone knows any child on the autism spectrum, they know one child on the autism spectrum because they're all so uniquely different. And my children were both pretty young whenever COVID happened, and attending the task was a really big challenge. And I was so worried about how I was going to get him to sit, or them, both of them, to sit in front of the screen and do whatever was being asked of them, because that's hard for me as an adult to sit and to have an expectation put on me in front of a screen. And now I have to ask a neurodivergent child to do that while he's just been on a screen during school all day. So it was really scary, and it was really overwhelming to think that, what if I'm wasting this therapist's time, or what if this isn't going to work and our progression is slowing down? So we had a lot of thoughts and anxieties about what that was going to look like in our home as well as for school and therapy.
Yeah, just even navigating like where's a good place and what's the most distraction
Yeah.
free environment, or is a dog going to run by, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Did
Yeah.
did virtual school impact your opinion of what telehealth with therapists might look like?
A little bit. They were vastly different just because he's in an MSD classroom, and he was then. So it wasn't the typical school that my neurotypical children were in at that time. So school was a little bit more regimented, and we had a lot of homework tasks, but we also were in front of the camera with the teacher every single week. But it was a little different for therapy because it was, hey, we're going to sit right here together. Therapist and I were catching up while he needed a break, which was great because it kind of had that ebb and that flow. So I didn't have to have him in front of the camera the whole time. When we were with the teacher, we did try to have him in front of the camera as most as we could. But it was great with telehealth because if he was needing a break, we could take a break. The therapist could sit there. We could catch up. We could talk about the challenges that we're having, how the homework that she had given us was. And it was a continued conversation while he was getting a break. One of my biggest fears about telehealth was my house. Was it going to be clean enough? I did not want, even though I had a great relationship with our therapist, I was like, what if I forgot to clean something up? Or yeah, exactly. What if my dog runs behind me or he starts barking? Is this going to be a distraction? Because obviously we live in our home, right? And we're not leaving because the world's shut down right now. So I wanted my house to be clean, but it definitely wasn't. And I quickly found out that they did not care because I think they were living in the same atmosphere that I was with their life, as well as doing telehealth in their home, which wasn't always clean. So it made me feel seen, and it made me not worry about it as much.
And it's kind of that like that real life glimpse into
Yes.
what kids and families are doing, which is one of the reasons
Yes.
why I love telehealth when I get to do it with kids. Like I said, I'm a speech therapist. I actually did therapy with one of your boys on telehealth a few times,
Yes.
but I love that we're able to connect.
Mm-hmm.
The kid is able to walk away from the camera for a little bit, and we can use that time for parent education or training or walking through some programming on a communication device or just problem solving things.
Mm-hmm.
I love to be able to problem solve things, real life things with families. So being able to
Mm-hmm.
say, show me, you said asking for a snack is really hard. Can you show me your kitchen? Where do you keep your snacks? So that
Absolutely.
I can look at
Absolutely.
those things and kind of help problem solve that.
And that
Um,
helped me as a parent just because I don't know how to be a therapist. I didn't go to school to be a therapist. And even now, we're talking about COVID, but we still do telehealth today. So if I need a telehealth session, I will switch us to telehealth. But it has helped me because I'm not expected to be a therapist, right? But you all get my child for an hour a week. 30 minutes a week, just depending on the session. He's with me the majority of the time. And so I need that carryover at home. And I didn't have the skills to do that. Still to this day, don't. And you all think in a way that I don't think. He doesn't like to play with me. He doesn't want to play with me. He wants to live in his own little world. But obviously I need him to play. I need him to have play skills. And you all are helping to teach me in my own space, in his comfortable space, how to play or how to communicate his needs. And it's super important because, like I said, that's his space. He's happy here. When he comes to therapy, it's great. He gets a break. He gets to go play in the gym and he gets to slide. But being able to be comfortable in his own environment while he's learning was definitely a shift and a change that I think that he needed that we didn't realize, because I needed to know how to help him at home, and telehealth helped give me those skills as well. I didn't know what toys were best. I took suggestions from my therapist about toys that we could work on for speech therapy or OT, and I was able to get those, and it translated great at home because I'd be like, hey, I bought this toy. What do we do with this? Teaching them colors, teaching them counting. I didn't know he could do a lot of that stuff because I'm not at school with him either, right? And I have a kid that doesn't want to play with me. So trying to teach him those things, I didn't realize he could do some of those, and he blew me away. And I think my husband and I both were super grateful for that time because it helped us be better parents for whatever his needs were, because we got to learn those skills from this side and not just being in the room with a therapist and them doing the therapy.
Yeah, and in a therapy room, I always think of it as it's a pretty sterile environment. We're in a therapy room with a door and there's not much distraction, or we're in a gym where there's lots of distraction, but we engineer that environment to set it up for what we want. Sometimes we can teach parents to do that. So turning little moments into therapy sessions, working on new techniques on, hey, how about you try this when you want him to do a certain skill, or I found this is helpful. And I learned so much from watching you guys interact with your kid, because at the end of the day, you're the expert on your kids, and I just happen to know a little bit about speech and language development. So just having that parent there and in that natural setting, it really helps us see how parents are setting up play. Like when you get a puzzle out, how do you introduce the puzzle? Do you, maybe try hiding the pieces around the room and see if we can do some find and seek, and then put it in there, and just coaching, giving direction to the parent, that parent coaching model that we hear about sometimes that we don't always get to do in the therapy room. It just puts us in a different role, which I think has been really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was definitely beneficial for us. It does still to this day sometimes take us out of our comfort zone, but I think that that's what's needed sometimes. I think that telehealth sometimes has a negative connotation in the therapy world as far as OT-PT speech, because it is a lot on the parent to do that. But the thing is like I said, I am with him the majority of the time, and I need to know how to do these things, because being in therapy for an hour a week, yes, it's going to give us skills, but that carryover at home is what's so important. And I've learned how to take what we learned from the therapist in the clinics and take that home through telehealth and learn how to do therapy at home. It was great, and it's been a blessing and an asset to our family.
That's awesome. So how did your therapist set you up for success when you were when you were getting ready to have a therapy session from home? What instructions did they give you? How'd they help?
So during COVID, it was a little different than it is now. During COVID, we would try to have everything set up before. Once they learned my house, they learned the toys that we had. It was easier to say, hey, can you have this ready whenever you start? They would send me a text. Now, because I feel like we're kind of telehealth pros because we have done it so often, I kind of have an idea in my head, and sometimes I'll just have things ready and say, this is what I've got, and the therapist will pivot really quickly and they'll adapt to whatever it is that I have available. If he's not attending to the task or he's not having any of what I have available, they may say, hey, let's go in the playroom and find something else. And it's like show and tell sometimes. I'm like, I have this. And it's super fun because sometimes the therapists are like, oh, that's a cool toy. Maybe I need to get that. And we need to do that during therapy. therapy. But the setup during COVID was a lot different than it is now. But I think if anyone were trying to do telehealth now with their therapist as a first time, it would take that introductory period of like, hey, tell me what toys you have, or, what room is he most comfortable in? And so now we have that down pat, but for a new person, it may take that history and that skill building and that communication between the therapist and what those expectations are for telehealth in the home to get to the point where we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I always try in the beginning when I start that telehealth relationship. Sometimes parents will choose telehealth because the commute's super long to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they live in a rural area, they're not able to be here as often as they could if they lived closer, will opt for telehealth. Sometimes it's we have a sick sibling and we just can't make it
Mm-hmm.
today, but Ben's healthy, he's fine, or he's feeling better, but he's still in that contagious period. Let's
Mm-hmm.
have a session. Weather, inclement weather is a great time, but just sometimes even just building that in. I know for our occupational therapists and physical therapists that do telehealth, sometimes they like getting that glimpse because they can look for those safety concerns for like mobility around the house, or, you know, how what's an obstacle, or if transitioning between the bed and the bathroom is difficult, show me
Mm-hmm.
what that looks like. They can look at the height of the bed to see, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's too high or it's too low and it's putting too much, or there's
Mm-hmm.
too many rugs in the way and it's a tripping hazard.
Mm-hmm.
Just those little glimpses that it's every day for the parent living in that house. You might
Mm-hmm.
see that. Any of
It
those
is.
things happen, or
Well, yes, but it's a little different, a little bit of a pivot. So we have therapy swings. We were very fortunate that we have a swing in our playroom, and we took it down to wash it, and then could not figure out how to rehang it. So I needed my OT to tell me. It had been years, and so yes, I didn't wash it for years, um, but
yeah.
I didn't have the instructions and I didn't know how to hang it. And I was like, please help because this is vital for regulation. He needs this. He swings every night before he goes to bed, and I need this hung up. So she was able to help me walk through step by step. And, after the fact, I thought I could have looked it up online, but it was nice to have somebody double checking me for safety because, I don't want him falling out of the swing. And he does get some air on that thing. You would think being indoors that he wouldn't, but he gets some air on it. But as far as like the safety, so the safety for the swing, absolutely. But it was the stairs. He likes this to this day. Well, he stopped now, but he would like to sit crisscross with his back facing the open stairs at the very top. And it was super scary. And the OT that we were with was like, this is a spot where it's super open. You're at the top of your stairs. He likes the openness of the space. And I think that's why he's sitting here. And yes, he's sitting backwards, face with his back to the open space. And it's like, where can we recreate that in a safe space? Because obviously having your, child sitting cross-legged at the top step with his back to the steps is a very scary thing. To this day, I don't know why he did that because I can't live in his brain, but it was helping us to recreate that somewhere else in our house that was just as safe. And that was super important to me because obviously that would have been a very rough fall had he fallen down the stairs. So, and please don't judge because we fixed it. We fixed it.
No, never any judging. And I think that too, in my experience with families, they worry about like if they don't have a lot of toys at home, like all families have different resources at home. And I've done telehealth with kids, like they're unexpectedly at grandma's house and they don't have the toys they typically have. So we build with canned food or soup, or we play with pots and pans, like we use what's available and what's on hand, which is always great too, because you might not have access to the same toys that I have in a therapy clinic, but it lets me see what the kiddo has access to at home and what we can turn into a toy or a real life experience. Did Ben like sharing things with his therapist on the screen, or was he just like going with the flow?
Most of the time, he ignored the therapist because Yes. I mean, you did therapy with him, so he would turn his back to you to let you know he was done, and then you and I would talk. But I shouldn't say most of the time. There were often times when he would turn his back, but he would do the work that we were asking. I remember one time we were trying to teach him numbers, and he didn't want to play with the numbers, but I got the remote, and you and I were working with the remote because it has numbers on it, and he was like touching the remote and saying 1, 2 on his device on his AAC, and it was not a toy. It was something that we used in the house every day, but he had seen us using it, and so we used it during therapy one time. It was very interesting. He's paid zero attention to the remote since then. But in that moment, that's what he wanted. And it helped because he was getting every answer that we were asking him, show me 1. And he would push 1 on the remote, push 1 on his AAC. And that was interacting with the therapist. But I think that it was a nice buffer because it was coming from mom too, and not just the therapist. And it was like, okay, mom's asking you to do this now. Yes, Miss Beth's on the screen and Miss Beth is giving us direction, but I need you to come sit with mama and do this. And for the most part, he complied. There were days when he just wasn't feeling it. And the thing is 100% telehealth is challenging within itself, but it helps to not stop the progress. We went through a bout of flu in our house where if it wasn't him, it was me or my husband or brother, and we would have missed 3 weeks of therapy. And that would have been detrimental because he was in a really good spot and he was in a great growth period. And we didn't miss that because we were able to do telehealth. Obviously, the week he was sick, we didn't ask that of him. But the week that I was sick, I felt well enough to do telehealth with him. Dad had flu the next week, and Dad did telehealth at home. And it was great for us because 1, we didn't have to leave our house, but 2, we also got to continue with the vein that we were on with his progress. And there was no lapse in that. And it was great.
Right. And I know too sometimes, and I know your family's super busy. My family's super busy when you have all the kids and jobs and things. Like if you have something pop up at school or a sickness, and then you have the stress on top of trying to get rescheduled. I mean, when you have other therapies, like speech is not the only therapy that Ben has. Yeah. He attends other things and has a schedule that's probably tighter than our 40-hour schedule at work. But just fitting in a reschedule appointment, did having the access to telehealth, did that help you? Did that relieve some of that stress for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because therapy is a priority for our family. Obviously, we want Ben to get as many skills as he can, and we want him to have those skills. And the older he gets, the time for progress is going to slow down. So we're doing as much as we can all the time. But having to not worry about missing a session because we didn't miss because we were able to flip to telehealth. We didn't have to reschedule it because we didn't miss it. We were able to have our session at the time that we were. There have been other times when we've rescheduled to a different spot that wasn't our normal spot and done telehealth. It worked out great because it accommodated our schedule, and the flexibility of it and being able to not have to put my shoes on and get out of my pajamas was great because some days I didn't want to do that. Some days I still don't want to do that. But it was able to have flexibility within the schedule, but still be able to have our sessions, which were super important to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And, when we try to introduce telehealth as an option, like we said, sometimes people are skeptical. When you, if you were skeptical at the beginning and you really didn't know how this was going to go, what was there a moment where you were like, oh, wow, this is actually working, or I can see this as being something I'd like to do periodically?
Absolutely. So full disclosure, I don't know if I would have ever done telehealth if it weren't for COVID, for the reasons that I mentioned before. Didn't want people to see my house. I didn't know how to be a therapist. What would I do if he were turning his back and didn't want to participate in the session? How would I navigate that? But I learned all of that stuff with my therapist, and it opened that communication between us to help me do better by him at home when I was doing things with him at home. And so there was an aha moment for us. And I think it's when he started really engrossing in the session and watching the camera and watching you as his therapist and then doing what he wanted, what you were asking of him on the AAC. So you being this floating head on a screen, we're still able to communicate what you were asking of him, and he was able to follow through. And that's something that I was super skeptical as a nonverbal child if he was ever going to be able to do that. And he did. And he was a rock star. I remember that session very well because he did everything that you asked him. And then when we were done, he was like, okay, bye. And he just got up, walked out of the room. And it was like, okay, buddy, you've worked hard. Like you've earned this break. Mom and Miss Beth are going to catch up, because it was, I was in shock and I was in awe. I was in awe of him. I was in awe of you. I was in awe of what we were able to do within my home that I never thought that I would be able to do. And not every session was like that. But it was still, even the sessions where he wasn't attending, I was able to read his cues and to be like, hey, okay, I think telehealth would work today. I don't think telehealth would work today. And that helped whenever we were asked to reschedule or flip to telehealth. Some days I'd be like, hey, can we just do telehealth? I think it's a great day. And then other days I would know, you know what, we're having a moment today. I don't think telehealth is an option. Can we reschedule? But it helps the flexibility, like I'd said earlier, of having those options to not have to miss appointments, to not have to miss progress.
Right. Absolutely. And then generalizing those skills. Like if we train them in this sterile environment in the clinic, and then we say, I really want him to be doing this at home. And, you know, it's hard. I can generalize, meaning I can teach him a skill in the clinic and then take him to a different spot in the clinic and teach it again, or see if I can carry that skill over in a different environment in the clinic. But seeing those things generalized to home, and being able to see that myself as the therapist and to document that in his progress, that's a big win when we can generalize skills over to other environments, especially not in the place where therapy was provided. So seeing him carry his own speech device from room to room, and that was a goal of ours for a while when we talked about, you got to let him carry it by himself. And you're like, I don't want to. But we figured, you're like, not going to happen. But now he does.
Yeah,
and
he does.
He'll go get it when he needs it.
I mean, it's his, and he knows that he's responsible for it's taking it wherever we go, and he will put it in his bag. He'll lug it on his shoulder. But yeah, he does it on his own now, which I don't know that he would have done if you hadn't forced me to make him.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. I know when my kids did telehealth, they did it for mental health therapy, for talk therapy as teenagers and preteens. It was just the convenience, because my husband and I both work full time, and they're teenagers in high school and middle school. Just being able to have access to that therapist when they had time to see us, and the boys could be at their computer. And at their age, they were able to totally do that independently. Like they didn't really need a lot of intervention from me to do that, which was very helpful to my family.
We talked a lot about Ben and his skills, but my older son, Noah, who is high functioning verbal, he also did telehealth during all of this, telehealth school, telehealth therapies. He was an OT, not speech. But same thing. He could log in on his own. I was present because I wanted to be able to help if I needed it, to give history to the therapist or to let him know how our week went. But he was able to navigate those needs on his own. So even for him as an older child, it was nice because he didn't have to miss progress, as well as have that independence and a little bit of responsibility to go along with it, to like be like, hey, it's time for therapy. I need to, get off my game and I need to go do what's being asked of me. And so it was good for him as well to have that ownership of taking himself out of a non-preferred task to do therapy from home. And he did a great job with it.
Great. Yeah. And something I think about when you said get off my game, like a lot of the kids that I've had really good success with telehealth have been my real technology kids that like to play games on their computer or mom's phone. We don't typically do a lot of that in clinic therapy. But on telehealth, it gives us the perfect platform for me to show them a game, and we can play a matching game, or we can play Mad Libs. I've had kids that I've been working on language expansion really love Mad Libs, and then reading back silly stories. So just giving them that opportunity every now and again to play, interact with technology with their therapist too, lets us see a different side of them. and just kind of opens up a different avenue to gain skills. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Liz, what would, like, for any of the moms who are listening right now, I know that you and I are in a unique situation where we understand what telehealth is. We've seen the pros and cons of it. We see the benefits. Like, but we also hear parents say, I don't think my kid would be great for telehealth because they're nonverbal, or they don't sit still, or I don't know how you would do OT or PT on telehealth. Like, and we speak to that when we ask them to schedule, and we talk about that, because a lot of times, you know, a therapist or a parent might look at Ben or Noah and say, yep, no, they're not going to be great at telehealth, so we're not even going to offer that, but they're missing some big opportunities. So what would your advice be to parents who are skeptical about telehealth, or advice you would give them when considering doing telehealth with their kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say don't be afraid to try. You never know until you try. And for me, that was definitely the kick that I needed to not be afraid of telehealth, or to not feel anxious about telehealth. Therapists don't care what your house looks like. They do not care about any extenuating circumstances. They just want to be there for your kid and to keep progress going. And I just want telehealth to be an option for families, so that they know that therapy doesn't have to just occur in the clinic, right? Because their time in the clinic is small, and the carryover is at home, and the carryover is in the community, and learning what he needs to learn in a safe environment, which is his home, really helped to be out with in school. So don't be afraid to try, because you never know what your awesome kid's going to do. I never thought Ben would sit. I never thought telehealth would be an option for us. I thought these people are crazy thinking that he's going to sit here for 30 minutes. And guess what? He did not sit for 30 minutes, but we would just pivot. We would go from room to room to room and do whatever it was that he needed, whatever space he needed, we gave it to him. And I would also want them to know some days it's going to work, and some days it's going to be great, and some days it may not work, and both are okay. Everything is okay on telehealth.
I've found myself jumping on a trampoline with kids during telehealth, where I'm on mom's phone and they're out on the trampoline jumping, and we're doing it, and we're, together. We've explored houses. I've met pets. I've done all kinds of things, done dishes with families, had meals with families via telehealth, but it just gives me a really cool glimpse into their lives. And that's really fun.
Yeah.
Any other advice that you have for parents in general, like parenting advice, autism advice?
Don't be afraid to ask your therapist, or to talk about any concerns, whether it's, hey, do you think he could do telehealth? If it's something that you're worried about, and you think, hey, the next time we're sick, or the next time there's bad weather, I don't want to miss therapy. Ask your therapist before that session to say, hey, we might consider telehealth as an option, because they'll be able to communicate with you and say, I think absolutely he could do it. Beth told me, I didn't think Ben could do it. She told me he could. And she's like, he absolutely can do telehealth therapy. You can do telehealth therapy. And I needed that kick, because I never would have done it. And so my advice is, don't be afraid to try. Ask your therapist in advance if they think if your child could do telehealth, and to try to mentally prepare yourself for it as an option, because it would open up a whole new world and a whole new avenue for therapy for your child.
Yeah. And from a professional standpoint, Liz, is this typically paid for by insurance? Like, is that a consideration that parents need to consider when signing up for teletherapy?
Oftentimes, it's usually covered by every plan. All Medicaid plans in the state of Kentucky do cover telehealth, and the majority of the commercial plans do. Some of the private funded ones don't, but at Marshall, we do, for all of our commercial insurance, we do upfront billing. So we do call and get benefits prior to your first visit scheduled. So that is one of the questions we ask. And we ask if telehealth is covered, so that going into every session, if we want to flip you to telehealth, we've done our due diligence by asking the insurance company if it'll be approved. And we don't ask families to switch to telehealth if their insurance doesn't approve it. And we have that notated in their chart. So absolutely, insurance, the majority of them do cover it. And Marshall does its due diligence by providing that information before we schedule you.
That's wonderful. That's a great benefit for our families. But just know if you don't come to us or you're not in our area, you can absolutely reach out to your insurance company and ask those questions. Do you have a telehealth benefit for therapy? Most places do. Like you said, COVID kind of changed that for all of us.
It did.
Kind of opened up some doors. Well, thank you, Liz, so much for opening up and sharing your journey and talking to us today about Ben and Noah, and just reassuring parents that this sometimes when we're forced into doing something we never thought we'd try, that it can end up being the exact tool that you and your family needed for your kids to thrive. I know it was for me, and as a therapist, it opened up a lot of opportunities that I didn't ever have access before to because I was in a clinic and didn't get to go into the home. So this is kind of the best of both worlds. For parents who are out there listening, if you're looking to start services or you are far away from a clinic or just need more flexible backup routine to keep your child's progress moving forward, give telehealth a shot. Don't rule it out until you try it. You are never married to it. So if it's something that is good for a time, but it runs its course and it's not great anymore, or that your child's not making the progress you would like them to make, tell your therapist and work something out so that they can get back into the clinic. Some of our families do hybrid, so they'll come in the clinic once or twice, and then we see them telehealth once or twice. So we're getting both of those, and that works well. So it's not an all or nothing thing. It's nothing that you have to sign up for life, but just I encourage you to give it a shot, and I think Liz would encourage that too.
Yeah, give it a chance. It might surprise you.
Yes, don't forget to share this episode with other parents who are curious about telehealth or therapy in general for their kids. And thank you so much, Liz. I appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Help, I Have Kids. If you're tuning into this podcast, that means you're a mom who's curious, committed, and ready to learn. And we see you. We'd love for you to join our Help, I Have Kids Facebook community, where moms just like you are connecting, asking questions, and encouraging each other every day. It's a space for real conversations, expert insight, and support from moms who get it, because we're all in this together. And if you know a mom who's feeling unsure or maybe overwhelmed, or just needs to be reminded that she can do it, she can advocate for her child with confidence, share this episode with her. We're building a village here, and we're glad you're a part of it.